Next we have dividing exponents with the same base. Here's the process. Number 1, line up the bases. Number 2, simplify the coefficients. Number 3, subtract the exponents using rule number 2. Finally, step 4 is make exponents positive by using rule number 5. Here are a couple of examples that are mentioned on your packet. Let's take a look at part A. Part A, I have x to the 10th over x to the second power. As you take a look at this, the rule is in effect that talks about dividing exponents with the same base. Following the process, number 1, I am going to line up the bases. Remember what we talked about before, that this is where we have to use our identity property of multiplication. By putting a 1 in front of this, then I'm going to separate them. 1 over 1, x to the 10th power, x to the second power. For step 2, it says to simplify the coefficients. Well, 1 over 1 is equal to 1, so I'll keep it 1 over 1. X to the 10th, x to the second. For step 3, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the exponents. Whatever I subtract, my answer will be as a numerator. 1 over 1 stays the same. And then I'm going to have x to the 10th power, x to the second power. When I subtract their powers, I will get x to the 8th. Finally, I need to make sure that the exponents are positive, which they are, so I will be done with my final answer, x to the 8th power. Letter B. I have a to the 3rd over a to the 7th. Problem number 1. Remember that because there's no coefficient, my coefficient is 1. So when I start with number 1, I'm going to line up the bases. So I have 1 over 1, a to the 3rd, and a to the 7th. Step 2. I'm going to simplify my coefficients. My coefficients are 1 again, so it'll just remain 1 over 1. A to the 3rd, a to the 7th. Step 3. I'm going to now simplify my bases by subtracting the powers. Well, a to the 3rd and a to the 7th, when I subtract those, it's going to give me a to the negative 4th. Use your calculator and make sure that that's correct. Finally, because my numerator is here and it has a negative 4th, I need to follow step 4, which says make exponents positive by following rule number 5. So I will have I'm going to have my fraction where 1 is my numerator, a is my denominator, and now my power is positive 4 and not negative 4. We have 2 more examples to follow. Let's take a look at letter C. Letter C is a little bit more complex. What I have is 10 x to the 2nd, y to the 4th, over 2 x to the 3rd, y. Number 1, let's separate them. I have 10 and 2, x to the 2nd power, x to the 3rd power, then I have y to the 4th, and y. Number 2, simplify the coefficients. Well, 10 over 2 is the same thing as 5 over 1. X to the 2nd, x to the 3rd, y to the 4th, and y. It seems like a lot of steps that are going on at this present time, And that's okay, because the more steps that I do, I am assured that I get the answer right. Also, if I get stuck somewhere or if I ever have an issue later when I'm looking at the answers, I can always be able to follow these notes and my steps to see if I made a mistake. Step 3. What I need to do is subtract the exponents. Well, when I subtract 2 and 3, I'm going to get 1. I just have to make it negative. And then I have y. 4 minus 1, don't forget the 1. There's a power of 1 here. 4 minus 1 makes 3. Finally, this is the tricky part, because it is stated for step 4 that we have to make the exponents positive. So I have this negative exponent here. Because it's negative, it's going to get brought down to my denominator. So everything that's positive will stay as my numerator. So I'll have 5 y to the third as my numerator. My denominator now is x to the first power, or just x. We have one more problem to do. If you thought number 3 was bad, take a look at number 4. So for number 4, what I have is 12 w to the 9th power y to the 3rd power over negative 3 w to the 3rd power y to the 3rd power. Step 1, let's separate them. 12, negative 3, w to the 9th, w to the 3rd. And then y to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. That's step 1. Step 2, I have where I'm going to take my coefficients and I'm going to simplify them. 12 over negative 3 is the same thing as 4 over negative 1. W to the 9th, w to the 3rd, y to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. Number 3. For step 3, subtract the exponents. So I remain with my coefficients as the same, 4 over negative 1. They are simplified. I have 9 minus 3 will give me 6. Y, 3 minus 3 will give me 0. So we're in good shape. We really don't have to really simplify anything, but I just need to make sure of something. Because for this particular problem, if we looked at our rules again, number 4 states that anytime I have a variable or a base that is raised to a power of 0, what does it give me? Do you remember? That's right, it gives me 1. So if I want to, I need to also remember that this is the same thing as 4 over negative 1, which is the same thing as negative 4, w to the 6th. And then 1 is somewhere in there, it's invisible by using the identity property.